Ever feel like you're just spinning your wheels? You know, like working hard, but not really getting anywhere?
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
It's a common feeling, and that's where we're diving into the 7 habits of highly effective people today.
Oh, a classic.
It is. It basically says ditch the quick fixes and build a life based on rock-solid principles.
I like that. Solid principles, yeah.
Yeah. It's about going from needing others to being self-reliant, independent,
Right.
and then to a place where you can really collaborate
Mm,
and achieve great things together.
that's the goal.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating about this book is that it really challenges us to look inward
Yeah.
before we even try to change anything,
Right.
our outward circumstances.
So it all starts with you.
Yeah, it all starts with what the book calls the character ethic.
Okay.
The idea that lasting success is built on who you are, not just techniques or tricks.
So it's like trying to build a house on a shaky foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter how fancy the exterior is, it's going to crumble eventually.
Yeah, exactly. The book argues that a lot of our struggles actually stem from trying to hack our way through life
Right.
instead of focusing on developing our character.
Interesting.
It's like that old saying, you can't cram for a harvest.
Oh, I like that.
Real growth takes time and consistent effort.
Yeah, that makes me think about those times I tried to take shortcuts,
Uh-huh.
like cramming for a test instead of studying consistently.
Yep.
Sure, I might have scraped by,
Right?
but did I actually learn anything? Not really.
Nope, not really. And this actually connects to one of the book's most powerful ideas, paradigms.
Okay.
Think of them as like mental maps
Right.
that we use to navigate life.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is sometimes we're trying to use a map of Detroit
Uh-huh.
to get around Chicago.
Oh, we're using the wrong tools for the job.
Precisely. And the book argues that often the way we see the problem, I.S. the problem,
Whoa.
we're stuck with these outdated mental models that are holding us back.
Okay, I need an example.
Yeah.
How could the way I'm seeing a problem actually be the problem?
Let's say you're constantly overwhelmed at work.
Okay, yeah.
A common paradigm is to think, I just need to work harder and longer.
Right.
But what if the real issue is a lack of prioritization or ineffective delegation? Or maybe you're stuck in a perfectionism paradigm
Yeah.
that's keeping you from finishing anything.
Oh, wow. That's a mind shift.
Yeah,
It's like instead of blaming the traffic, maybe I need to check if I'm using the right navigation app in the first place.
exactly. And once you start challenging those old paradigms, you can open up a whole world of new possibilities and solutions.
I like that. That brings us to the idea of proactivity. The book makes a big deal about focusing on our circle of influence
Yes.
instead of getting stuck in our circle of concern.
Right. Proactive people concentrate their energy on things they can actually control. They don't waste time worrying about stuff they can't change.
So instead of stressing about the economy, I should focus on
Yeah.
improving my skills.
It's
Exactly, networking to make myself more marketable.
Precisely. It's about taking ownership of your situation
Yeah,
and focusing on actions you can take to make a positive impact.
love that.
The book shares a story about the author's son who was struggling in school.
Okay.
Instead of blaming the teachers or the school system, they focused on what they could control as parents.
What did they do?
They started by examining their own behavior and expectations. They worked on creating a more supportive environment at home
Okay.
and focusing on their son's strengths instead of his weaknesses.
And that helped him improve
It did.
just by them changing their approach.
It's a powerful example of how focusing on your circle of influence can create positive ripple effects.
Wow. This is making me rethink how I approach challenges.
Mm.
Instead of feeling helpless,
Yeah,
maybe I can find something, even something small, that I do have control over.
that's the essence of proactivity, choosing to focus your energy on what you can influence,
Yes.
even when surrounded by things you can't.
I love that.
So building on that idea of taking control,
Okay.
let's talk about the power of habits.
Okay.
The book says that to really make something stick, you need 3 things: knowledge, skill, and desire.
So I need to know what to do, how to do it,
Yeah.
and actually want to do it.
Exactly. Think about learning a new language.
Okay.
You can have all the textbooks and grammar rules, that's knowledge, but without practice, that's skill.
Right.
And a genuine interest in the language, that's
Yeah.
desire. You're not going to become fluent.
This makes me think about trying to be a better listener.
Mm-hmm.
I've read tons of articles on active listening, but sometimes I'm just so focused on what I want to say next
Right.
that I don't truly hear the other person.
That's where the desire comes in.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just know the techniques.
Right.
You
Yeah.
need to cultivate a sincere desire to understand the other person's perspective.
So how do I cultivate that desire? It feels like some days I'm just not in the mood to listen deeply.
It starts with recognizing the value of empathic listening.
Okay.
When you genuinely understand someone, it deepens your connection, it builds trust, plus you might learn something new
Right.
or gain a fresh perspective.
Okay. I could see how that would make me want to listen more.
Yeah.
It's not just about being nice. It's about getting something valuable out of the interaction.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's move on to a concept that might sound kind of counterintuitive.
Okay.
Begin with the end in mind.
Ooh, like that.
It's about creating a mental blueprint before you start building anything.
Okay.
Just like an architect designs a house before the first brick is laid.
Otherwise, you end up with a bunch of random rooms that don't make sense together.
Exactly. The book argues that we need to apply this same principle to our lives. If we don't have a clear vision of what we want to create, we end up living by default, reacting to circumstances instead of shaping our own destiny.
This reminds me of the time I decided to run a marathon. If I hadn't set that goal up front and visualized myself crossing the finish line,
Yeah.
I never would have made it through all those months of training.
That's a perfect example. By having a clear vision of the end goal, you are able to stay motivated and push through the challenges. Now think about how this principle applies to other areas of your life, like your career, your relationships, or personal growth.
It's a bit daunting, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like I need to have a blueprint for every aspect of my life. What if I get it wrong?
It's not about having a rigid plan that can't be adapted.
Yeah.
It's about having a clear sense of direction.
Right.
And making conscious choices that align with your values and aspirations.
So it's more like having a compass than a detailed roadmap.
Precisely. It's about setting your internal GPS to guide you towards the destination you desire.
I like that. Okay, I'm starting to see how powerful this concept is.
Lit.
Now let's tackle one of the most popular concepts from the book.
Yes.
The Quadrant 2 Time Manager. I've heard a lot about this, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it works.
It's basically a system for prioritizing your tasks based on their urgency and importance.
Okay.
We can visualize these tasks in 4 quadrants. Urgent and important, not urgent, but important.
Right.
Urgent, but not important. Not urgent, not important.
Okay, so the urgent and important stuff is like putting out fires, things that demand immediate attention.
Right. But the book argues that we need to spend more time in quadrant 2. Not urgent, but important.
Okay.
These are the things that contribute to our long-term goals and well-being,
Right.
but often get neglected because they're not screaming for our attention.
So things like planning, relationship building, personal development, taking care of our health.
Exactly. These are the activities that really move the needle in the long run, but they're easy to put off because they don't have an immediate deadline.
This reminds me of that classic analogy of filling a jar with rocks, pebbles, and sand.
Yeah.
If you put the sand in first, you won't have room for the big rocks. But if you start with the rocks, the important things,
Right.
the pebbles and sand will naturally fit in around them.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. The problem is most of us are so busy dealing with the urgent that we never get around to the important.
So how do we break free from the tyranny of the urgent?
The book emphasizes the need to be proactive in scheduling time for quadrant 2 activities.
Okay.
It's about blocking out time for those important but not urgent things
Right.
before your calendar gets filled up with other people's priorities.
So instead of letting my day be dictated by emails and meetings,
Yeah.
I should proactively schedule time for things like strategic planning, brainstorming, or working on my personal development goal.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your time and energy instead of letting them be controlled by external forces.
This Quadrant 2 framework is really eye-opening.
Totally.
I knew I should be spending more time on those important but not urgent things, but I never had a clear system for actually making it happen.
That's the beauty of it. It's a simple yet powerful tool for shifting your focus from reactivity to proactivity.
I like that a lot.
Now, remember how we talked about moving from independence to interdependence?
Right.
That's where these next few habits come into play.
Okay, let's dive into those. I'm really curious to see how these habits build upon each other.
The next habit is all about shifting from a competitive mindset to a cooperative one.
Okay.
It's called Think Win-Win.
So think win-win. It sounds good in theory, but how do you actually put it into practice?
Well, it's about shifting your mindset from either thinking to both-hand thinking.
Okay.
Instead of seeing every interaction as like a zero-sum game, where one person wins and the other loses,
Yeah.
you look for solutions where both parties can benefit.
Can you give me like a real-world example?
Sure. Imagine you're negotiating a salary with a potential employer.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on getting the highest possible number,
Hmm.
you consider other factors that are important to you,
Right.
like flexible work arrangements or professional development opportunities.
Okay.
You present a proposal that addresses their needs
Yeah.
while also meeting yours.
So it's about finding creative solutions that create value for everyone involved.
Exactly. And the book stresses that think win-win isn't just a negotiation tactic.
Right.
It's a whole philosophy of human interaction.
Okay.
It requires integrity, maturity,
Yeah.
and what the author calls an abundance mentality.
Okay. Break that down for me. What's an abundance mentality?
It's the belief that there's plenty out there for everyone.
Okay.
It's the opposite of a scarcity mindset,
Right.
which sees life as a pie that has to be divided up,
Yeah.
with someone always getting a smaller slice.
So instead of viewing success as a limited resource, you believe that there are opportunities for everyone to succeed.
Precisely. And when you approach life with an abundance mentality, you're more likely to be generous,
Yeah.
collaborative, and supportive of others.
This makes me think about those times I've felt envious of someone else's success.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if they get the promotion, it means I won't. That's definitely a scarcity mindset.
Recognizing those thoughts is the first step.
Right.
By cultivating an abundance mentality, you can shift your perspective and start seeing others' success as inspiring rather than threatening.
Okay.
It's about believing that there's enough for everyone to thrive.
I can see how powerful that shift in thinking would be.
Yeah.
Now, think win-win is all about collaboration, right?
Yes.
So how does that connect to the next habit? Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Well, before you can find solutions that benefit everyone,
Yeah.
you need to truly understand where everyone is coming from.
Right.
This habit is about becoming a truly empathic listener.
So it's not just about waiting for your turn to talk.
It's about putting aside your own agenda and genuinely trying to see the world through the other person's eyes.
Right.
It's about listening with the intent to understand, not just to reply.
This reminds me of that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly. When you make a sincere effort to understand someone, you build trust and create a foundation for more effective communication.
So it's not just about being nice. It's about creating a space where real dialogue can happen.
And that deeper understanding lays the groundwork for the next habit, synergize, which is all about creative collaboration.
This is the one where 1 + 1 = 3, right?
Exactly. Synergy happens when people with different perspectives and ideas come together
Yeah.
and create something that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay, paint me a picture here. What does synergy look like in real life?
Imagine a team working on a new product launch.
Okay.
You have the marketing folks focused on reaching the target audience, the engineers focused on the technical aspects,
Yeah.
and the designers focused on user experience.
Right.
If they all work in silos, they might end up with a decent product.
Okay.
But if they truly synergize, they can tap into each other's expertise and create something truly innovative and extraordinary.
So synergy is about valuing those differences and finding ways to leverage them for a common goal.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that everyone has something unique to contribute,
Right.
and that by working together, we can achieve results that would be impossible individually.
This makes me think about how much richer our lives would be if we embraced this principle of synergy. Imagine if we could apply it to our families, our communities, even global challenges.
It's a powerful concept with limitless potential. Now, the final habit, sharpen the saw, is all about ensuring that we have the capacity to keep practicing all these other habits.
So it's about taking care of ourselves so we don't burn out.
It's about recognizing that we can't be effective in any area of our lives if we're neglecting our physical, spiritual, mental, or social emotional well-being.
The book uses that great analogy of the lumberjack who keeps trying to cut down a tree with a dull saw.
Right.
It's much harder and less effective than if he just took a few minutes to sharpen the saw first.
Exactly. It's a reminder that self-care isn't selfish.
Right.
It's essential for our overall effectiveness.
This makes me think about those times I've pushed myself to the limit, working long hours and neglecting my health.
Yeah.
I might have gotten things done in the short term, but in the long run, I ended up exhausted and less productive.
Sharpen the saw is about making those consistent investments in ourselves so we can operate at our best.
Yeah.
It's about finding activities that nourish our minds, bodies, and souls.
So things like exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, learning new things, connecting with loved ones.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you and making it a regular part of your life.
This deep dive into the 7 habits has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a whole new framework for thinking about personal and interpersonal effectiveness.
The beauty of this book is that it's not just about theory.
Right.
It's about practical principles that you can start applying today.
And it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state. It's about continuous growth and improvement.
As we wrap up, remember that quote we mentioned earlier about those Detroit maps. Keep those handy as you continue to explore new territories of personal growth and effectiveness.
I will.
You might be surprised at what you discover when you start challenging your old paradigms and embracing the 7 habits.
This deep dive was just the beginning. Now it's time for our listeners to put these principles into action and see what kind of amazing results they can create in their own lives.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep diving deep.